I wasn't late. I wasn't careless. They sat me by the kitchen on purpose. The clatter of plates behind my chair was loud enough that I couldn't hear the first toast. Every time a waiter swung through the swinging door, a gust of heat and the smell of dishwater rolled over me, and right in front of me, taped to a flimsy folded place card, was my name, misspelled. Everyone else's table settings were calligraphy on thick cardstock. Mine looked printed off at 4:55 p.m. on a jammed office printer. Across the ballroom, my team sat together at a round table, glowing with centerpiece candles and silver. 11 colleagues, 12 chairs, and one seat deliberately left empty. That was supposed to be mine. I knew because earlier in the week, when the seating chart circulated in email, my name was right there next to them. Now that chair belonged to guest. Nobody looked in my direction. They lifted glasses, smiled for the photographer, leaned in for the group shot. The gap in the circle where I should have been was invisible to them, but searing to me. It wasn't an accident. My manager had laughed during setup. Sometimes you need to keep analysts away from clients. Let the senior people handle the handshakes. He said it lightly, but when I walked into the gala, there was no confusion, just humiliation. I stood at the edge of the ballroom, holding my little clutch, watching other analysts walk to their proper tables. And then the event coordinator intercepted me with a too bright smile. "Oh, you're here, table 34, just there by the service entrance." That was the overflow table, technically part of the ballroom, but practically the corner where you hid the unwanted. My shoes clicked too loudly across the floor as I walked to it, already sweating under the heat lamps from the kitchen door. The round linen cloth had a coffee stain on it. The centerpiece wasn't candles, just a dusty artificial fern. Nobody else sat there, just me. For the first 30 minutes, I tried to look occupied, checked my phone, rearranged my fork, stared at the agenda booklet. Colleagues passed by without eye contact. Someone from my team, Brad, snapped a photo of their table and posted it in Slack with the caption, "All the stars together." When I saw it, the hollow circle in the picture where my chair had been cut deeper than the smell of detergent wafting from the kitchen. Then the SUV of voices around me dropped. A shadow leaned over my shoulder. A man's voice said low and calm, "Why are you sitting here?" I turned. A man in a tailored midnight suit, silver hair at the temples, no badge lanyard. I knew his face immediately. The CEO of our biggest client, the account we all lived and died by. He was supposed to be across the room with the board, not standing over the dish pit table. I swallowed hard. It's where they put me. He studied the empty chairs, then my name card. His eyes flicked toward the glowing circle of my team's table. His mouth didn't change, but his brow lifted a fraction, like he'd solved a puzzle faster than expected. Then he did something nobody else that night dared. He leaned close enough that only I heard him and said, "Act like you're with me. Humor me." He pulled back before I could react, extended a hand like it was the most natural thing, and said loud enough for the nearest table to hear, "Come on, they're waiting for us." I stood because what else could I do? My knees shook. I followed him past the rows of tables toward the center circle. Eyes followed us. My manager's jaw actually dropped when he saw me trailing behind the CEO like a shadow. The photographer shifted lenses as we passed. At the VIP table, someone had pulled out a chair next to his. He gestured. I sat. My place card wasn't there, of course, but the server removed a spare and set a fresh wine glass in front of me. The centerpiece here was crystal, not plastic. The napkins were folded like fans. He spoke casually as if we'd always been sitting together. "Remind me, your role?" "Analyst, data and reporting." My voice sounded thin. He nodded like that was the answer he expected. Then he asked the one question that cut through the noise of the gala. "Last quarter's adoption numbers." They said engagement dipped. Why? It wasn't small talk. It wasn't polite filler. He was testing me right there in front of board members, directors, even my own boss, a table away, pretending not to listen. I gripped the stem of my glass, pulse hammering, and answered, Clear, simple. Because the dashboard was built for reporting, not for daily use. Customers log in for a metric, not to stay. If we change the flow, adoption rises. I didn't name names. I didn't say the dashboard had been my project before it was reassigned to Brad, who presented it as his. I just stated the problem, the way I'd rehearsed in my head 100 times on the commute. He held my eyes for a long moment, then nodded once. His fork clinked gently against his plate. He didn't praise me. He didn't smile. He just turned to the board member on his right and said, "That's what I told you." The rest of the night blurred. Courses arrived. Toasts rang out. My team watched me from across the room, whispering furiously, but I wasn't at the kitchen table anymore, and the man beside me, the one person with more power than my entire chain of command, was watching not just what I said, but what I didn't say. He didn't ask me what I knew. He asked me what I wouldn't say. That's how I realized the CEO wasn't just making conversation. He was studying me. After the gala toast, the VIP table settled into quiet chatter. Crystal glasses, murmured deals, a string quartet soft in the background. My hands were steady now, but my heart still drummed. I knew my manager's eyes were drilling holes into my back from his table. The CEO leaned just slightly toward me. "You could have said who designed that dashboard," he said, almost casual. "But you didn't." I blinked. It was a team effort. His lips tugged at the edge, not quite a smile. "That's one way to put it." Then he shifted back into neutral posture, as if he'd said nothing at all. But I felt the test. He wanted to see if I'd throw someone under the bus. A board member beside him asked a question about regional adoption trends. Without even turning, the CEO said, "Ask her." My pulse jumped. I explained in plain language. The Midwest usage curve had a sharp drop because of 2 product changes rolled out without customer comms. Fixable, but it showed how communication gaps hit harder than bugs. The board member nodded, impressed. The CEO just cut his steak like he'd known the answer already. That's when I understood. He wasn't grading me on knowledge. He was grading me on composure. But my manager wasn't done. He came striding over with his practiced smile, leaning a hand on the back of my chair. "Hey, she's needed at check-in. Could you spare her?" His tone was sugary, but I knew it for what it was, an attempt to drag me away before I said more. The CEO set his knife down with slow precision. "No, she's with me. No anger, just fact." My manager froze, then laughed thinly. Of course, just thought she might help." He walked off, stiff at the shoulders. I wanted to disappear into the floor, but the CEO turned back to me like nothing happened. "Walk with me." We slipped out into the hallway. Quieter there, marble floors reflecting chandelier light. He didn't waste time. "Forget the gala answers. Explain this to me like I'm your cousin at Thanksgiving. Why do your clients log in less each quarter?" I took a breath. "Because they don't see the value in daily use. The dashboard isn't built for them. It's built for executives. Pretty charts, slow refresh. If I had authority, I'd strip it to essentials. Show them what they need in 3 clicks. Right now, it's like a museum tour. They need a tool." He stopped walking. For the first time, he looked directly at me. "Then why hasn't it been done?" Every instinct screamed to tell the truth. Because my manager vetoed it. Because credit games matter more than customer outcomes. But I remembered his earlier look, the one that measured not what I said, but what I didn't. So I answered carefully. "Process. Layers. It gets slowed down." His jaw moved once. Thoughtful. Then he nodded and kept walking. I didn't know it yet, but that single choice, biting back the easy complaint, would weigh more than any slide deck I'd ever built. Back at the ballroom, music swelled. My manager pretended to laugh with directors, but I saw the stiffness in his shoulders. The CEO, though, was already in motion. He pulled out his phone, typed a message, and handed it to his assistant. Later that night, I found out what it said. He'd requested a late-night adoption pull. Raw client usage data, straight from our vendor portal. It was the kind of request that should have been routine. But at 10:41 p.m., My manager denied access, claimed the system was down. What he didn't know was that system logs timestamp everything. That denial was the first red flag on record. At my corner of the VIP table, I kept my face neutral while the orchestra played, but I could feel the air change. The CEO wasn't just watching me anymore. He was watching the people who had tried to erase me. My seat moved again, this time at the after party. Not by mistake, by design. The gala had wound down, speeches over, lights dimmed. People were drifting toward the sponsor lounge upstairs, where cocktails and deals carried on long after the cameras left. I followed my colleagues at a distance, clutching the same small clutch, trying to look like I belonged. When I reached the glass door to the lounge, my badge didn't scan. The reader beeped red. Security shook his head. Access not on your profile. I froze. But I'm part of the team. Look, that's my table. Sorry, can't override. Behind the glass, I could see my manager already inside, laughing too loud, his arm flung casually over the back of a chair. He caught my eye for just a second. His smile widened. He'd had my access stripped. I stood there in my heels, humiliation burning through me all over again, when a voice said from behind, "She's with me." It was the CEO's assistant holding a tablet. She tapped it once, showed the guard my name on a list. Temporary badge. Add her. The lock clicked. The guard stepped aside. My manager's smile evaporated when he saw me walk in at the CEO's shoulder. Inside, the lounge was warmer, dimmer, layered with cigar smoke and piano jazz, velvet chairs in clusters, low laughter under the music. This was where real contracts were born. And now I was sitting among them, a glass of champagne placed in my hand before I could even refuse. "Tell them," the CEO said, nodding toward two board members. "Customer journey, 1 minute." I swallowed hard, then outlined what I'd seen firsthand, how a client account manager had to log in through 3 layers just to reach their metrics, how the dashboard buried the KPIs under 10 clicks, how customers gave up and went back to Excel. I spoke plainly, like I would to a friend. No buzzwords, no jargon. The board members leaned in, actually taking notes. One asked, "So what's the fix?" "Cut the clutter, make it intuitive. If a customer can't find value in 60 seconds, we lose them." The CEO didn't praise me, didn't nod. He just sipped his drink, eyes flicking between them, as if confirming what he already knew. But my manager couldn't let it go. He cornered me at the dessert bar, fake smile plastered on his face. "You're overstepping. This is not your lane." "I was asked a question," I said quietly. He leaned closer, hissed, "Compliance issue. You're not authorized to represent the team. You could lose your job." His breath smelled like whiskey. Before I could answer, another voice cut in. "Calm. Even. Then show me the policy." The CEO had walked up behind him. He looked directly at my manager. "Email it to me." Exact language. My manager froze. His mouth opened, then shut. He muttered something about clarifying later and slunk off toward the bar, shoulders tight. I stood frozen, heat in my cheeks. The CEO didn't look at me. He just plucked a chocolate tart from the tray as if nothing had happened. But I saw what he'd done. He hadn't defended me out of pity. He'd forced my manager to reveal himself. Later that night, a phone flashed. Someone snapped a candid of me, and the CEO bent over a cocktail napkin, sketching out a sample dashboard flow with a pen. My handwriting messy, his notes clean lines. We didn't notice the photo then, but by Monday morning, it would circulate everywhere. I went home that night with my heels in my hand, the echo of jazz still in my ears. I should have been exhilarated, but instead, I was anxious. I knew my manager. He wasn't going to let this slide. He'd already humiliated me once. He'd try again. But what I didn't know yet, what none of us knew, was that the CEO wasn't done either. His quiet audit was already underway. By the time Monday came, it wouldn't just be my badge access under review. It would be the entire culture my manager had built. They called it a debrief. It was an ambush. Monday morning, 9:03 a.m. sharp, I got a calendar invite stamped mandatory. No subject, no agenda, just a conference room on the 14th floor. When I stepped inside, two people I'd never seen before were already waiting, both from HR, both with clipboards, both smiling too wide. "Thanks for coming," the taller one said. "We just want to clear up some boundary concerns from Friday night." Boundary concerns? My stomach dropped. This wasn't about clarifying metrics or adoption rates. This was about painting me as the problem. They started with questions disguised as kindness. "So you attended the gala after party? Were you invited to sit in the VIP section? Did you represent yourself as a spokesperson for your team?" Each question tilted like a trapdoor, each one loaded with the implication that I had overstepped, snuck in, broken rules. I answered carefully. "I was asked to sit there. I was asked to speak." "By whom?" The shorter HR rep pressed, pen poised. The air in the room thinned. I hesitated. Then I opened my clutch and slid a printed email across the table. The header glowed with weight. From Executive Office. Subject: Access for Analyst. Name. It was the invitation the CEO's assistant had sent at 7:12 p.m. Friday, the one that got me into the lounge. The HR reps blinked. The taller one coughed into his fist. Before they could recalibrate, the door opened. A voice cut in over the carpet. "She was with me." The CEO stepped inside. No announcement, no assistant, no preamble. He wore a gray suit and carried a tablet under his arm like it was part of him. "If you're questioning her presence, you're questioning me. I'd like that noted in the record." The HR reps froze, pens dangling. One stammered, "Oh, of course. We're just clarifying." "No," he said evenly. "You're deflecting. Let's clarify something else instead. Who edited the seating chart file Thursday night at 11:47 p.m.? The HR pair exchanged glances. "We don't have that information." "I do." He placed the tablet on the table, screen glowing with system logs. Audit trail shows a single user, manager's name. Same user who revoked her badge access at 8:02 p.m. Same user who denied the adoption data request at 10:41 p.m. Citing system downtime. Logs prove the system was fully operational. Would you like me to continue? Silence pressed into the corners of the room. The CIO looked at me once briefly, then back at them. This isn't about boundaries. This is about obstruction and retaliation. My heart hammered, but I stayed quiet. He was doing the talking now, and every word landed like a stone dropped in water. The taller HR rep cleared his throat. "We'll, escalate this to compliance." "You'll escalate it directly to me," the CEO corrected. "I chair your Customer Advisory Council. I also hold board observer rights, which means I will personally review the compliance findings." The color drained from their faces. I realized in that moment just how far his reach extended. He wasn't just the client. He was the watchdog no one expected to walk into this room. They wrapped the session in nervous haste, asking me to write a factual account for the file. I kept it plain, clinical, times, dates, direct quotes, no speculation, just truth. When I finished, the CEO lingered a second. His voice was lower now, directed only at me. "Do not embellish. Do not editorialize. Facts are enough." Then he walked out, leaving the HR reps scrambling behind him. I walked back to my desk in a fog. My manager was there already, acting normal, telling loud jokes in the bullpen. Nobody else knew what had just happened. But I knew. The paper trail was real. The ambush had failed, and the first cracks in his armor were showing. But the thing about cracks is that once they start, they spread fast. Faster than anyone expects. They didn't fire him for being mean. They fired him for lying. By Wednesday morning, the compliance report landed. I wasn't supposed to see it, but word travels fast when your name is on half the evidence logs. The findings were blunt. Seating manipulation traced to one account. My manager's. Access revocation at 8:02 p.m., logged under the same credentials. Data denial at 10:41 p.m., falsified with the excuse of system downtime. expense reports submitted with duplicate vendor charges for event management, all approved by him. In corporate speak, the conclusion was damning. Pattern of obstruction, retaliatory action, and financial irregularities. The announcement came over email at 4:17 p.m. Manager's name placed on administrative leave pending termination. People gasped in the open office. Slack threads lit up. Some pretended shock. Others dropped cryptic emojis. I just sat frozen, staring at the screen. But he wasn't the only name. The HR partner who had cornered me in that debrief was also cited for procedural bias, for participating in a setup without proper documentation. Suspended, effective immediately. By 5 p.m., both of them were escorted out. The bullpen went silent, like a storm had passed, and nobody wanted to talk about the wreckage still lying on the ground. That should have been enough. Justice served. But what came next was bigger. The CEO convened a special session with our leadership the next morning. He didn't come alone. His board observer badge gave him a seat at the table, and he used it. I wasn't in the room, but I heard later what he said. Renewal of our contract is conditional. She, and he said my name clearly, becomes our dedicated client success lead, decision authority, compensation aligned, or you lose the account. The number tied to that contract was more than our entire department's budget. Leadership didn't blink. They agreed. That afternoon, my director called me into his glass-walled office. He didn't meet my eyes at first. Effective immediately, you're being promoted to client success, lead, on CEO's company account. Compensation package attached. Retention bonus approved. He slid a folder across the desk, still not looking up. Inside, a new title, a salary jump, a retention check with a number I'd never imagined seeing next to my name. I walked back to my desk in a daze. Colleagues stared, whispered, scrolled their phones like they could fact-check what had just happened. My old desk suddenly felt too small, too exposed. That evening, as the office emptied, I gathered my things slowly. The CEO appeared in the doorway. Jacket over one arm, expression unreadable. You know why I asked you to act like you were with me? He said. I swallowed. So I wouldn't be humiliated? No, he said, because I needed to see what you'd do when it mattered. If you'd grab the easy win, throw names, point fingers, or if you'd hold steady. You did. I didn't know what to say. Gratitude felt too small. Anger felt wasted. He gave a single nod. Facts are enough. Remember that. Then he left. I sat there alone, the folder heavy in my lap. My manager's chair was already empty. The HR partner's desk cleared out. The picture from the after party, me sketching with the CEO on a napkin, was circulating now, captioned in Slack channels, with jokes, memes, rumors. People wanted to know how I'd pulled it off. But I hadn't pulled anything. I just endured. He was the one who moved the chair. Still, for the first time, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I had leverage, I had a platform, and the story wasn't over, because the next gala was already on the calendar, and the seat with my name on it wouldn't be near the kitchen this time. At the next gala, I chose my own seat. A year later, the ballroom looked the same. Chandeliers glowing, silver cutlery glinting under warm lights, champagne bubbling in tall flutes. But everything else had changed. My name wasn't printed on cheap cardstock shoved by the kitchen. It was embossed on heavy cream paper at the head of the client panel table, under a single word, keynote. I wasn't just attending this time. I was leading. The months since that night had been relentless. I'd rebuilt the client dashboard from the ground up, stripped away clutter, designed a clean interface that put power back in customers' hands. Adoption rose. Satisfaction climbed. Contracts renewed. For the first time in my career, I didn't feel invisible. I felt indispensable. When I took the stage for the customer roadmap session, I saw faces light up that had once looked through me. Directors leaned forward. Clients nodded. Applause rang louder than the string quartet that followed. I wasn't shaking in my heels anymore. I stood tall, speaking clearly. my slides sharp, my points sharper. And when the CEO introduced me, the analyst who became the architect of our success, I caught my reflection in the stage lights and almost didn't recognize myself. But the real closure came weeks later, in a room without chandeliers, without champagne. A standard interview panel, fluorescent lights humming, bottled water lined on the table. We were filling a mid-level role on the client team. Candidates filed in one by one, resumes crisp, smiles rehearsed. And then he walked in, my old manager. He looked smaller than I remembered, his suit a little too loose, his smile a little too wide. He didn't realize I'd be there until he sat down and opened his portfolio. His eyes flicked up, froze, then scrambled to rearrange themselves into something like confidence. I didn't smirk, I didn't gloat. I asked the same scenario questions I asked everyone else. How do you handle conflict when a teammate takes credit for your work? What does transparency mean in client reporting? What would you do if a junior employee was left out of a major event? His answers stumbled, circling platitudes, never landing. He tried to charm, he tried to pivot, but the panel wasn't swayed. They heard what I heard. Vagueness, evasions, the absence of accountability. When it was over, he shook hands too quickly and left. The room went quiet. The hiring manager looked at me. I just said, "He's not a fit." That was all. Decision made. No hire. I walked out of that room lighter than I'd walked in. Not because I'd crushed him, but because I hadn't needed to. Karma doesn't require fireworks. Sometimes it's just the quiet closing of a door. A month later, the CEO caught me after a quarterly review. We stood by the elevator, papers in his hand. He asked, "How does it feel?" "To win?" I said. He shook his head. "To be seen." I thought about that night a year earlier. The kitchen table, the fake smile from my manager, the humiliation that almost broke me. And then I thought about the moment the CEO leaned down and whispered, "Act like you're with me." Now I understood. He hadn't rescued me. He'd repositioned me. The rest I'd earned. I smiled. Feels like finally sitting in the right chair. The elevator doors opened. He nodded once. "Remember, I just moved a chair. You did the rest." And then he was gone, leaving me with the quiet hum of the lobby, the weight of everything that had changed, and the knowledge that sometimes the smallest shifts, one chair, one choice, one voice, can turn humiliation into power and power into freedom.